Hey, how's it going? I was just gonna, I think I'll do a talk on the migrant crisis in Europe and just like immigration in general and um, the difference between like a normal immigration and what's happening in Germany right now, in Europe. Um, Basically, the whole point of immigration is to fill a need for work. And when you have a high unemployment rate in your country, a lot of this immigration isn't exactly what it's said it's for. Basically, when you bring in immigrants, you can hire them with lower wages and less workers' rights. In Canada, we have a temporary foreign worker program where they get treated better than temporary workers in other countries, but they don't really get paid as much, and I doubt their employers tell them all their rights and stuff like that. So it's actually kind of a problem here. I'm sure it's a problem in other countries too. But the Canada's an immigration country. Most Western democracies are, and it's worked relatively well for a long time. The only time it becomes a real problem is when it's either unexpected or it's uncontrollable. Like, each country should have a legal immigration system. If you don't have a legal immigration system, then it basically encourages the immigrants to come in illegally. Because when you fill out the paperwork, you gotta wait a couple of years, and then you gotta check in with officers, and then they know your name and address and all your family members. So you're under a little bit more scrutiny if you do it legally. That's how it should be, within reason. But if you do it illegally, then they seem to think that they have less trouble. So if you let it happen, then it becomes the better option for these people. A lot of them are really poor. They don't want to go through the system. They're trying to just make money so they can send home. So they're going to do whatever route is best for them. But like in the States right now, with the Mexican border, they don't really, a lot of areas, they just freely walk across. And they're coming from really poor countries. I think it's a majority are not Mexicans. They're called other than Mexican. And they're coming in from all of South America. A lot of these countries are extremely poor, so they save up all their money. These are like these are like the upper class poor people that make it to America. They're able to afford a train ticket, and they go straight through Mexico to the border. But the problem is, any other immigrant that wants to go to the States legally, they're basically waiting in line, but other people are cutting in front of them. So it kind of discourages the whole legal system if they don't control it. The reason a lot of people really dislike Trump's idea of a wall, the only reason it's even plausible nowadays is because of the amount of violence in Mexico. It's worse than a Vietnam style war. So for someone to propose building a wall is actually not that radical, because the amount of firepower on the other side of an invisible wall is supreme. So I don't know. The problem with walls is is it's a sign. It's already a sign of a. It's a visual indicator that a relationship is broken down. So maybe it has. I don't know. But like, if you build a wall, it also stops the both sides from moving. So I mean, if it's a security thing and it's the right thing to do, then it might be the right thing to do. But it has a lot of long-term problems with that, because the government after can come in and then build a wall on the top side, and then it's a prison. So I don't know. It makes sense if it's a war, but or if there's a war zone in the area. But anyways, the refugee crisis in Europe right now. How I would describe it, because there's two types of refugees. There's a refugee that just fled bombing. They are legitimate refugees, where they literally barely made it out of there, and then they have no money, and you have to take them in, because if someone's running away from a war, then you have a duty to bring them in. The problem is there's a lot of people that are not necessarily running away from war. Like, a lot of times we see on TV these war zones. Well, if you drive like half an hour away, it's completely peaceful. So to say that the people in the very peaceful town and the people in the war town are the same refugee is a little misleading. Because a lot of these refugees are, and it makes sense for them to think like this, but they're coming there for economic opportunities. Because if they make, let's say, I don't know, $20 a day in their country, and they can go to Germany and make $150 a day. A lot of these people claim to be refugees to make that kind of life change. So the scenario I would give it is, if you're throwing a house party and you if you want to have a successful party with no damage, then you invite the people that you know. If you throw a party with 300 people, most of them you don't even know. There's going to be a lot of vandalism. There's going to be a lot of like problems. It's going to go all night. It won't actually end till like 7 in the morning. Police will probably come. It'll just be a big problem. So that's kind of what Europe has done to itself, is they've thrown apart. It's not to make light of the situation, but it's basically thrown a party for 300 people, where now they're overwhelmed. And I'm not making light of any of these people, because if they're fleeing from a war zone, or if they're fleeing from economy, it's still not like probably their number one choice. The thing is, Germany, the people there, they didn't actually vote for this necessarily. So unfortunately, probably the best thing Europe could do is to peacefully send some of these people back home, because if they can't prove they didn't come from a war zone, then they probably shouldn't be allowed, because there's enough people that are coming from war zones, and they should focus on helping those people first. But anyways, they like, a lot of these refugees, another problem is, if they are coming from a war zone, then they have, the thing is, when you go to war, you don't have mental problems until after the war, because you're so high on adrenaline for the whole time. So by the time you get to the new country and you calm down, that's when all these problems are going to start kicking in. So, or potentially, not always, but like, like they're bringing in young men that just came from a war, and there's gonna be really no jobs or wives for them necessarily. So they're uh, they're gonna have a lot of mental problems, and they're not gonna have any support group. So I don't know if Germany is gonna have to deal with this, but in all these countries. But it's kind of a bad situation because it's already happened. But like they uh, they have to basically tell the people that are not down for that country that they have to leave. Because if you have all these people come in without documents, they're not accountable to anyone. And you have no history on them. And at the most they have is their phones. And they're still letting in people that have like anti-Western images on their phone. As long as that's well defined and not a loose term. Like as long as they're not abusing their what they define as anti-Western. But like if it's clearly they potentially could be troublemakers, then they have to be vetted. This is what Donald Trump keeps saying. He got in a lot of trouble for saying he wants to temporarily cancel Muslim immigration. The media, what they did was they shortened that clip down by about 5 or 6 seconds, and it sounds like a totally different statement if you don't include the temporary, just temporarily. And then he also says until they're properly vetted, which means that they're more than welcome to come after they're vetted. But the media twisted that, and that kind of started the snowball that that immigrants weren't sure if they could trust them. But he's not saying at all that he's gonna ban Muslims. What he's saying is America has enough homeland security anxiety. They don't need to be bringing in people that clearly want to attack them. And the only way they can ensure they don't bring those people in is if they vet them. So Donald Trump has to say this hard statement that people don't like to hear, especially when the media clips it up and twists it. But he had to say it, and it makes sense if there's going to be people openly against you. So as long as it's temporary, and as long as you treat these people, as long as you give them respect and you treat them within the law too, because how you treat your enemies is like Guantanamo Bay, how they treated them is how they might treat Americans one day. So I don't think they necessarily will, but it's a bad habit to get into, to kind of have a law and system like that. But like basically the thing with immigrants is a lot of people on the left will say, well, we have to show compassion, and that's definitely true, but it's within reason. And a lot of people in the right will say, we can't risk it, our economy is already failing, and it's just more competition. It's going to make it harder on us, because a lot of these immigrants, they're not the poor immigrants. These are the cream of the crops half the time. Like they are a direct competition. That doesn't mean that we can't bring lots in. It's just a balance. Like the left can't bring in everyone, and the right can't say no more necessarily. And you just have to find a balance. Like you should definitely vet them. To say we're gonna just bring these people in compassion unless there's a direct reason to do it. But this is being drawn out, so you have time to vet them. I think in Europe the main problem is that it's young, fighting age men. In today's society, if they all start going crazy for whatever reason, the reaction will be a police state. And that's the last thing that Europe really needs. So it almost seems like they set it up this way. It's kind of a problem, reaction, solution. They want more security. They throw a 300-person party, and then now they need a bunch of security to show up. But who knows? Hopefully they work it out. Hopefully, I feel bad for the people that have to be sent home, but I think it's necessary. In terms of like non-war like situations, just like the civil society is working pretty good. Then you definitely want to take in immigration if you have a birth rate below 2.1. Canada and a lot of Western countries, only America has a sustaining birth rate in terms of Western countries. But if you don't have 2.1 birth rate, then you have to have immigrants. There's actually no choice. You need a tax base to pay for the services. But like Canada, it's worked extremely well. We took in Syrian refugees. We took in enough that we could handle we handled it pretty efficiently. So, and I think we have higher standards too. But like they seem to do pretty well. I mean, it's unfortunate that we pay a bunch of money for refugees and not also give it to the homeless though. But I mean, these Syrian people, I'm sure they're extremely grateful. They might, if they are really grateful, they'll end up being the best citizens. They won't, they'll probably be loyal for a long time. But like, I don't know, it just has to be done correctly. Like, I think there's a big problem with these temporary foreign worker programs. Because the employers are, they basically, like, even in Spain, where some areas had 40% higher unemployment, they still brought in temporary foreign workers. So basically what the government is saying is that, oh, well, we need skilled labor. If you have 40% unemployment, you need to make those people have skills. This is the same scenario as doing nothing for homeless people. If the unemployed aren't looked after, then it doesn't make any sense to bring in more workers. So I think that's where a lot of these frustrations are, in terms of on the immigration issues. But otherwise, like, we've been an immigrant society since our inceptions, at least in the West. So as long as it's not a war scenario, it should continue pretty smoothly. Yeah, that's my